Basically, I was trying to get them used to the idea, the students used to the idea of why you would actually argue about something. So I was trying to, first of all, I tried to illustrate it with, we started off with a starter where they had like a sort of a piece of paper which had some information on, like a piece of text which came from an advert, basically. It was about acai berries, I think, the acai berry diet and the superfoods and all that sort of thing. And I asked them, we went over sort of what a claim is, what evidence is, and we talked about data and sort of came up with some definitions for different terms. And then I asked them to basically, in different colours, highlight where they found a claim, where they found evidence and all of these sorts of things in the text. And actually it turned out that mainly it was just claims. And I said, well, is there any evidence to back this up? Is it actually true? Can you trust this source of material? And most of them came with the answer, well, no, you can't, because there isn't any evidence. And I said, well, that's why anything that anyone tells you, you should ask why, and you should ask them to come up with some evidence and actually argue your point as well, and make sure that it actually is reliable. So we sort of did that, and then we'd been doing about, I tried to keep it towards sort of around the topic that I had been doing, which is about sound. And we did some very crude hearing tests the lesson before, which they found quite fun, so I thought I'd carry that on. And I gave them some data which was about, I think it was about hearing loss in a factory, and I gave them two claims. One of them was ageing causes reduced hearing loss, and I think the other one was loud sounds causes reduced hearing loss, which they would say, well, that's obvious, you know, you can. And I said, well, you still have to make sure you question it and go through the correct process. And they basically they were given some data and they had to analyse it, maybe do a for and against the claim that they were given, so they choose which one they wanted to do. And then they came up with a conclusion at the end of which one, whether they thought the claim was true or not. And actually, it was really interesting because they actually went into the fact that, okay, the data was really strong, but also, you know, they talked about the actual reliability of the data that they had and whether actually it had been collected in the right way. But the conclusion they came to was something like, well, actually, the data is stronger evidence than any of the evidence that is against that claim. So we think actually that the claim is true. And although they had for and against, they were able to then weigh up which was the strongest type of argument and go towards that one. So it was quite interesting in the fact that I think they progressed because they had to think about both sides rather than just accepting it.
Right. So how did you go about planning this lesson?
I actually sat down with Craig for a little while and we both just talked about what we wanted to do. I had a look around to see if I could find anything. I was trying to keep it towards the subject of hearing or hearing tests or something, because it's something that they've been doing and it followed on quite nicely. And literally I just thought, well, it'd be nice to know what claim is, so maybe go through definitions. It was just like a thought process of starting off like the sort of key definitions and then trying to apply them to a situation. And I just tried to find some data really and went from there.
So how did you teach it?
How did I teach it? Well, in what way do you mean? Just sort of the activities that we did?
Yes, yes, that and the group work with
yes, it was in groups actually. Sorry, yeah. I split the class into, I think it was 8 groups. I think they were in pairs for when they were looking at the pieces of paper and they had to highlight all of the claims and the evidence and the data. And then they fed back to the whole class. And then we got into slightly larger groups to look at the actual data that I was giving them. And each group, when they got into their groups, I gave them the 2 claims and they were allowed to choose which claim they wanted to do and to investigate. So I gave them a little bit of choice. I told them that there was one that was harder than the other one to actually analyse. So some people it's kind of a bit of differentiation. They might have gone for the hard one, or they might have gone for the easier one. And they worked in groups and basically were given an A3 piece of paper for their group. They split it into 2 halves, for and against the claim. They wrote the claim at the top and then they basically wrote down their points. Okay, well, I think this data shows that actually the claim is true. However, they didn't repeat their experiment. They only looked at 3 factories. They didn't look at more. Their range wasn't very good, and then they came to their conclusion at the end. And then we fed back to the rest of the class.
And how do you think it went?
I think it went quite well. The work that they produced was actually, I wasn't sure how well they would do it, because when I actually gave them the pieces of paper, I didn't give them any guidance at all on how to read the graphs. We have done it in the past in previous lessons, so it was kind of practicing skills from before. I did have to give them a little bit of prompting as I was going round. They were really struggling to find against their claim. They were really struggling with that column, and I said, that one will be harder. But actually, when I looked at their work afterwards, you could actually see that they had come up with some quite good arguments for and against. And again, that did put me out of my comfort zone. I was like, right, okay, I'm not going to structure it too much, just give you the work and see what you come up with. And it was a nice surprise to see that actually the majority of them had come up with something quite strong. Yeah.
Sounds like it went well.
I think it went quite well, yes. I would definitely do it again.
Which years were they?
They were year 8, and they were sort of a middle to top ability group, so they were quite strong. Yeah.
So when you say you would do it again, would you do it differently? Would you make any changes to it?
I probably would. The only changes I think I would make is actually the topic that I'm covering at the time. I think that actually it's quite versatile, and it can be, that technique can be used with any, it can be applied to any sort of, the range and content can be completely different. It's the skills that they're using. So I would probably try and use it maybe with a different year group, maybe sort of years 10 or 11, and see how it works with them, and maybe try and do it on a different topic and see if what they come up with. It's good practice for them.
Great.
Okay.
I've got any other questions? Anything else you'd like to say about the lesson, or?
No, not about my lesson. No, I don't think so. I was very impressed with all the other lessons when I watched them.
I'm sure yours is great. I haven't seen any of them, obviously. But, how did you feel about filming it and all that?
I did do a bit of filming for an AFL project, which was through Bristol University as well, so I was kind of used to it. But yeah, you tend to just ignore it. It was fine. Yeah, I didn't mind at all.
Good. So if you give it the camera again, you could.
Yeah, it's fine. The students though were nice as well, because they're sort of like, oh, what's going on here? And the camera up there. And the only thing I did find with the camera is that when we were trying to film students in their smaller groups and try to film what they're doing, they clam up completely, and it's really hard to get them to say, look, just ignore it, just ignore the camera and just carry on with what you were doing. So it's difficult to sort of get them working naturally and that sort of thing.